Hey guys, so first thing I want to say is I've been gone for half a year. You probably noticed that. So I've been abroad and I have a couple of big projects that I needed to finish. So I just didn't have the time for tutorials, but now I'm back and I hope I'm going to go back to the one or two tutorials every month. So I'm going to try to make even more tutorials, but one or two a month is guaranteed. And I'm back, guys. So for the first tutorial after coming back, I want to go back to the basics. What this means is I want to add to the tutorial series, the interior tutorial series, the first series I ever made. You can follow the series you will have the link for the playlist in the description below. So you need to finish that series in order to do this tutorial, because this scene is the final scene that I rendered in tutorial number 12. So what I wanted to teach you today is an upgraded version of rendering things. In the time that I did those tutorials, I used a regular way of rendering, and today I switched to linear workflow. You probably heard about this if you're in the 3D field or trying to learn about it. This workflow essentially means that you use a linear way of doing things, like a line, which is easier, more accurate, and it's faster. So what does that mean? What I want to do is to take this scene that we rendered already and just reset it. Reset it, I mean regarding the lighting and the rendering setup. So I'm going to delete all the lights from the scene. Just delete all the lights. I'm going to go here, isolate lights, select everything in the scene. It will select only the lights. I have 9 lights here that I used in order to render the tutorial number 12 scene. I'm going to hit delete, just delete the lights. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to reset the render setup here. So I'm going to go to render setup. And in order to reset this, I'm going to go to renderer, just select it doesn't matter which renderer, just not V-Ray. Let's say default scanline, and I'm going to select back V-Ray. Now everything was reset. All the settings are reset. Okay, so after I reset the rendering setup and I deleted all the lights, what I want to do now is change the camera type. Since 3D Studio Max 2015, I think, we have a new camera type in standard, and since version 3 of V-Ray, so again, this tutorial is going to talk about versions 2015 and up of 3D Studio Max and version 3.2, let's say, of V-Ray and up. If you have versions that are before that, I really suggest to update, because you have a lot of new things and the rendering is much faster in these versions. And some of the things I'm going to talk about apply only to version 3.2 and up and 3D Studio Max 2015 and up. So in the newer versions of 3D Studio Max, you have a physical camera, which is essentially the V-Ray camera, but from V-Ray 3 you don't have a V-Ray camera anymore. You just use the physical camera from 3D Studio Max. So I want to change this regular camera here to a physical camera, which has a lot of options that I can use later. I'm going to show you some of the basic ones of them. So in order to put this camera exactly in the same place as this camera, I'm going to hit T, which is a shortcut for top, and go to the top viewport. And I'm going to place the camera exactly where this camera is. And I'm going to take the point that we look at and drag it to this point here. So the same spot the camera was before and the same spot the camera is looking at. Now I'm going to go to the front viewport using the F key as a shortcut, and I'm going to take this camera and let's go to select by name. I want to select the camera and the target. So I'm going to select the camera, click Control and hold it, and select the target also, and hit OK. Now let's take this camera up to be in the same place as this older camera. Let's zoom in and take this camera down, zoom out, maybe zoom in a little bit more, just so this line will intersect this line here. As close as possible. It doesn't have to be 100% accurate, but close. Let's go back to top, zoom in, and let's move, deselect everything, select only the camera, not the point it's pointed at. Now the gizmo is on the camera, so I'm going to take the Y and X axis and move them to the place of this camera. Zoom in, just place it in the same spot, or just about the same spot. Let's go back, and let's go to select by name. I'm going to select the target only. This is the target, and I'm going to zoom in and place it in the same place. So essentially I'm just changing one camera for another. Now if I hit C, I can choose from the physical camera and our camera from tutorial 12. So let's go to the camera from tutorial 12, hit F3 to see it not in wireframe, and now hit C and change this to physical camera. As you can see, it's almost the same. Now, if it's not the same for you, what you need to do is, let's go to the top, let's select this. I did some experiments before, so maybe that's why the camera is so aligned to one another. But in your case, it might not be the same. It might be a little bit more closed or open, the camera shutter speed. So let's just select by name, select the physical camera, and just change the values here. The width value, let's go to hit C, and we'll see what the camera sees. The width value, if you take it up, it goes, zooms and zooms out. So the width value in your case, I think it's 35, so just change it to 45. And the lens focus, which does essentially the same thing. Okay, if you take this value down, it goes back, take it up, it zooms in. Control Z to undo whatever we just did. So change this value to 45 and this value to 30. One more thing, our cameras are outside of the room. So let's go down here to miscellaneous, open it up, and in here you have clipping planes. So if I go to camera now, you can see that if I disable these clipping planes, you can see the walls of the room. I want to clip through the walls. In order to do this, I'm going to enable clipping, and I'm going to take this red plane, which is the near plane, and just take it so it is closer to the bed or to the room itself than this wall here. So if I take it near, just take it near here. So a value that works for me is 177. This just clips through everything that is behind the red line. So it clips behind these walls here. So if you go back a little bit and this red line intersects the wall here, if you go to camera, you can see, let's hit wireframe and go to shaded. You can see this white line here is the wall. You can see the wall because it's not totally clipped. So let's go back to top and take it up a little bit so it clips from the wall. Okay. Let's go to camera back. And now this camera is essentially aligned to the other camera. So we have the older camera, the newer camera. Okay, now that we aligned it, we can take the older camera, select it, it's named camera 001, and just delete it. So we have one camera in the scene. Now once you put this camera inside of your scene in V-Ray 3.2 and up, when you go to render environment, you will see that this exposure controls, physical camera exposure controls, is on. It is automatically turned on when you put a camera in the scene, which is good for us. It's these values are very good. The exposure is stable like this, so you don't need to change anything here unless something is wrong with the scene. So just make sure, go to environments and effects in rendering environment. Make sure that this exposure control is on physical camera exposure control and active is on. That's it. It does this automatically. So next thing I want to do, let's go to the camera here. If I render now, it is too bright, it's burned, doesn't look good at all. That's because we didn't align anything to the scene. So now what we need to do is align the render setup. So this is much easier than before because we're using the linear workflow. So first thing, let's go out of this. First thing in linear workflow we want to make sure is that gamma is on 2.2. You can read a lot about gamma in the internet, but essentially what it means that the contrast of monitors is works best with gamma 2.2. This is what you need to know for now. If you want to go deeper inside what gamma is and what it does and gamma monitors and things like that, you can just hit gamma 2.2 in Google. You will find infinite number of material on this. But for our purposes, what you need to know is that gamma 2.2 works best with most modern monitors. So in order to make sure that our scene is using gamma 2.2, we're going to go to rendering, gamma LUT setup, and make sure that this enable gamma LUT correction is on and hit OK. So now as you can see, the scene is lit up. The gamma is corrected to the monitor. So now the darker places and the brighter places, they are all much less contrasted. And if we need to fix this, we can fix this in Photoshop later, and it will be much easier than to start aligning things inside 3D Studio Max. So just make sure that rendering, gamma LUT setup is on enable gamma, and effect color selection and effect material editor. Hit OK. This is the first thing. Next thing, go to render setup. Make sure that our picture here is set to HDTV, because this resolution is essentially the resolution of 90% of monitors. The width and height is like not a box, but it's like a rectangle. So it's stretched to the sides. It's the width is more than the height. Okay, so the HDTV is best for most monitors. So I'm going to use HDTV. Let's choose the resolution as let's go and HD ready, 1280 over 1720. It's not a high resolution, but for our purposes for now it is fine. Next thing I want to go to is V-Ray. Here the first thing I do is go to global switches, change the default to expert because we're experts, and I'm going to disable this option here. This option here is a very bad option in my opinion. It doesn't add anything, it just makes the render time much slower, and the lighting, the final image is much more noisy. So I'm disabling this by default every time. Every time I start a scene, I disable this probabilistic lights. What it does essentially, what it's supposed to do is if you have a lot of lights in your scene, like 50 lights, the V-Ray calculates only the lights that you truly need and uses only them, and this is supposed to make the rendering times much less than it is. But in my experience it doesn't work. It only makes the render time more and makes the image quality less. So I'm going to disable this anytime I render. Next thing I'm going to do is change it from progressive to adaptive. What progressive does is essentially it works like a V-Ray real time. It just renders the image noisy, and then the noise goes down as the rendering time goes up. So the longer you render, the less noisy the image will be. This is good for other rendering engines, but for V-Ray I always prefer using adaptive method, which is it uses buckets, as you saw before. It just renders using buckets. So this is the adaptive version, is the version I always use. All these options here I'm not going to touch. They are great. V-Ray did a great job of just assigning the best values to everything as you start the program. So I'm not going to touch anything unless I need to, because the image is noisy or we have light leaks or things like that. Next thing I'm going to go to is global DMC. 1 second, I just did something wrong. Just move this to the wrong place. Okay, global DMC. So I'm not going to change anything here. I'm just going to show you these values. These values you can change to make the image less or more noisy. We talked about it in the previous lessons. But as I said before, V-Ray 3.2 and up uses very good values. So I'm going to leave them as is and see how it renders. In the environments rollout, I'm not going to change anything because I'm not going to use the environment. Color mapping, I'm going to change this from Reinhardt to linear multiply. Linear multiplier is the best way to use linear workflow. So as we talked before, the linear workflow is a straight line workflow without changing any dark bright values. Just leave everything on 1, change from default to expert, and as you can see the gamma is 2.2, which is the best gamma. We talked about this. So I'm going to leave this on 2.2, 1, 1, everything as is. Not going to touch anything, just change to linear multiplier. Next thing I'm going to do, let's leave the GI for the end. So I'm going to go to settings, change this to expert, and use Embrace. Let me explain what Embrace is very quickly. Embrace, if you have an Intel Core i7 or i5 processor, it can use Embrace to make the render go faster. So if you're using an Intel Core i5 or i7, which is newer than, let's say, 5 years old, this option needs to always be on. The rendering will be much faster. So just leave it on. But we have here, use Embrace for motion blur. Now motion blur is if there is an animation in the scene, let's say a bouncing ball, and you want to create a blur when it bounces, so it looks more like a movie, like the ball looks blurred when it moves. Then you need to use Embrace for motion blur, and it will make the motion blur render faster. But we don't have animation here, so I'm going to disable this. Now I usually disable this also, but we have use Embrace for hair. We do have hair in this scene. This fur carpet is fur. Fur is essentially hair. So just leave the Embrace, use Embrace for hair on, and use Embrace always on. Okay, now that we did this, let's go to GI. Let's go to expert and enable GI. Now I want to change the brute force to irradiance map. Irradiance map and light cache are the two options I always use, because from my experience they are fastest and leave the least amount of noise. So I'm going to use irradiance map and light cache, and I'm not going to change anything in the options. V-Ray did a great job of using these options. This preset is on high. If you want to make the render go faster, you can change this to medium. I wouldn't recommend going to low because the details will be smudged. So medium or high. I'm going to leave this on high. I have a high spec PC, so it will render fast regardless. If you have a fast PC, leave this on high. It will give you the best results in darker areas and in small spaces like here where the curtain meets the floor. So I'm going to leave this on high, and light cache I'm going to leave everything as is. Okay, so I'm going to leave essentially everything as is. In GI what I did is enable GI and change the first rollout from brute force to irradiance map. That's all I did. Everything else just leave as is. That's it for the options menu for the V-Ray renderer setup. Now that we set up renderer, I want to see the lights that I'm going to put in the scene in real time. In order to do this, I'm going to use V-Ray RT, V-Ray real time. For our rendering engine not to reset every time I use RT, I'm not going to choose RT here. I'm going to change the production renderer to active shader mode. And in the active shader mode, I'm going to choose V-Ray RT. And let's change output size to HDTV so that the aspect ratio will be the same. Change this to 1280 over 7020 resolution. And now when we go back from active shader mode to production renderer mode, all the options we did are still here. So let's go to active shader mode. In active shader mode, the only thing I want to show you is, well, two things. First thing is here. If you have proxies in your scene, or displacement, or motion blur, XREF, it's like proxies, particle systems, any of these, just click V on them so that you can see them in the scene. I prefer to always click them on, because sometimes I don't remember if I have displacement somewhere or something like that, and if I don't click on displacement, it won't show me the displacement in real time. Next thing I want to show you is the engine type. You have two types here. You can use your CPU, your Intel or AMD processor, or you can use your CUDA, which is the GPU, which is the graphics card, to render. This depends entirely on your system. If you have a system with a good GPU, I prefer using the CUDA, the GPU option, because it renders much faster the real time. So I'm going to use the CUDA. Now, if I render now, everything needs to be, it will start calculating. Yeah, the image is totally dark. There is nothing in it that will light the image because we deleted the lights. So now after we assigned all the renderers and we did the rendering setup, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add lights to the scene and then render. So first thing, I can see that there's a mistake here that I did in the previous tutorials, and the mistake is the doors are open. So essentially all the light from the outside that comes from the balcony and things like that just goes inside these holes here, and these are like windows. In real life there is a room here, and there is a room here and a room here, so you don't have environmental light coming through these holes. You have room lights, like more warmer lights. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose these walls and I'm going to close these openings, these door openings. Just control select a second these four edges and hit bridge. Now it will close them, it will bridge between them. Control select four of these, bridge, and here the same thing, control select four of these, bridge. Now that we close this, all the other openings are opened to the exterior, so it's fine that the environmental lights will go in. Now next thing, I want to hide this background because I'm going to work on the background later. I just want to see the light in the scene, so right click, hide selection, the background. Let's go and put lights in the windows. So in order to put lights in the windows, I'm going to go to front viewport, hit F. So we have one window here. I'm going to go to lights, V-Ray, V-Ray light. Make sure it's not on dome but on plane. And hit on snap toggle. If you hit the right button on snap toggle, you need to see that the vertices is on here, and in the options the enable access constraints is also on. So now it will snap, it will show you a little yellow line here, snap to the window. So I'm going to click hold the light and move it down here. That's it. Let's go to the perspective viewport. As you can see, I just placed the light in place. You can do this without using the snap, but it is much more accurate like this. So if I want to snap this to this window, I couldn't do this in the perspective viewport because the light will go like this. It faces down. So let's delete this. I need to go to this viewport. So I'm going to go to this view. This view is the left view. So I'm going to hit left, hit L, and using the V-Ray light, I'm going to snap to this point and down here to this point. Let's go to perspective, see if it's in place. Again, if you having trouble with the snap toggle, just disable it and go to the front viewport or left viewport and just place it by hand. It doesn't need to be this accurate. It's fine if it's just a little couple of centimeters up or down, it's fine. So okay, so now we place this light here. I'm going to hit the snap toggle and shift drag this light to copy it to this window. I'm going to create a copy, and now I'm going to choose this. You know what, let's go to the left viewport, disable this snap toggle, just move it in place. As I said, it doesn't have to be perfect, just move it about in place. So it's essentially the same lights there were before in the scene. Now I'm going to place another light here for the balcony. So I'm going to go to the back viewport. This is the balcony. I'm going to V-Ray light, place a V-Ray light, not using the snap toggle, here. Let's see, this is the floor, so till about here. Now let's go to the top viewport and let's take this light back to this position here, just a little bit outside the window. So we're going to place the lights outside the windows. This is fine, it is just about perfect. So we placed lighting in all the openings. Now, in order to make our lives even easier, unlike before when we just tried these values here and gave it colors and things like that, the only thing you need to do in all of these lights is hit skylight portal. That's it. You can't touch the value of multiplier and how strong the light is, and you can't touch the color of the light. That's because this light is essentially a continuation of the environmental light. So it just takes the environmental light that I'm going to put in a second and just gives it to the inside of the image. So you don't need to align anything inside these options. Another thing that you need to know in version of V-Ray 3.2 and up, that we no longer have subdivision values. So these values that we made bigger in expense for render time to make the image more smooth are now turned off by default. You can't touch them, and the V-Ray does calculation by itself to make the image look smoother and the noise to be the same in all the objects in the image. So you don't have to worry about subdivisions in lighting, and also in materials. The subdivision in materials that we talked about in the previous tutorial are now off. V-Ray does this automatically, which is great. It saves a lot of time and you don't need to think about these things. So now, just hit skylight portal. Don't hit simple, because simple will make this light less realistic. It will be faster and less time consuming to render and use less memory, but it will use like a simple map for the environment. We need to use the more realistic one. So don't hit the simple, just hit skylight portal. And just hit on this light the same, skylight portal, skylight portal. So in every interior scene from now, what we're going to do is all the lights in the windows and in the openings from the balconies, or any light that shines from the outside, we're going to use skylight portal option, and that's it. Not touch anything else inside the lighting options. So we have skylight portal here. Let's assign this to lights and just make sure that every light is on skylight portal. This light is on, this light also, and this light is also on skylight portal. Now if we don't have a background light now, if I go to camera and I render now, we don't have a backlight, these lights will shine nothing inside, because they are just a representation of the environmental light. So this is black because we don't have lighting in our scene. So this is all you need to know about the lights from the outside. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set an environment for this scene. So I'm going to go to rendering, environment, and click in environment map on none. I'm going to choose from these maps V-Ray, V-Ray sky. Okay, so this sky is going to be our environmental map. I'm going to place it inside the material editor by dragging it to an empty slot, or you can use any slot you want here. Even if it's not empty, it's fine. Just place it in the scene in every slot you want. Drag and drop, and make sure it's an instance, because if it's not on instance, the changes you will make here will not affect the lighting here, which is the lighting of our whole scene. So instance, what happens here also. Okay, so this is our environmental light. Fine. Next thing I want to do is I want to specify sun node, and we want to put a sun in the scene. that will shine inside the room, just as we had the sun before. So I'm going to go to lighting, V-Ray sun. I'm going to shine the sun inside like so. It will ask you, would you like to automatically add V-Ray sky environment map? I'm going to hit no because we already did this. But you don't have to do this. You can leave the rendering environment on black and just put the sun and hit yes. In our example, we'll hit no because we already did this manually. We added the V-Ray sky before. So now that the sun is here in the scene, shining from this sun node to inside our room in this direction. So let's go to the front viewport. And the end of the sun is on the floor, which is fine. We're going to take the sun itself and take it up. Because the sun shines from about here, let's say we want. Let's go to the camera. The sun shines like this now. So now if I render, before I render, let's go to material editor. We have a specify sun node and sunlight, we have none. So let's go to perspective viewport and just hit on none and select this sun here. So now if you move this sun in the sky, all the environment of the lighting of the scene, this V-Ray sky, will move with the sun, which is the best option. So now let's go to camera and render this, real-time render this. We need to wait a little bit for it to start. I am using the V-Ray RT with my GPU, with my graphic processor, with my video card, because I have a strong video card. If you don't have a strong video card, you can use a CPU to render V-Ray RT, as I said before. Now as you can see, it renders in real time, but it's very, very noisy, but it doesn't matter. We can see that it's way too bright. So now we can make changes to the scene, to the lighting in the scene, without closing this window, and the changes will be made in real time. So let's go to select by name, and select the sun. And in the sun, we're going to go to properties, and intensity multiplier, let's make it much weaker, 0.01. Once you do this, it automatically changes the lighting in the scene, and you can see in real time if the light is too bright or too dark. So 0.01, and the second light we have in our scene is the environmental light, which is the sky itself. So now the sky itself, we're going to change also the sun intensity multiplier to 0.01, like the sun. Once we do this, you can see in real time, it started rendering in real time. You can see the room is a little bit too dark now. So I'm going to make this 0.02. And the sun also 0.02. When you change the sun intensity multiplier, it will change this light on the floor here. If it's too bright or too strong, you can make it weaker. And this light here, the environmental light, will actually be all the other lights in the scene, all the lights that bounce from the floor to the walls and things like that. So 0.02 for the floor, I think it's a little bit too strong. Let's make it 0.015. So now on the floor it's a little less strong, and the light of the environment I want to make a little bit more strong, so I'm going to make this 0.03. Okay, so now the light shines from outside inside the room, and it is looking great. Next thing I want to do is I want to put another light in. Let's close this rendering window for 1 second. Let's go to perspective viewport. Everything is well and good, but we have only the exterior light, F3 to see in wireframe, exterior light coming through to this room. I want to add another light. Let's say that this door, let's just select all, select this walls. Let's say that this door here is open. And you have, from the living room, you have a weak light, like a yellowish light coming through. And I want to see this, because all the light that is coming through from the outside is bluish from the sky. So I want to see a little bit of yellow. So I'm going to place in this direction, which is the right view. Going to go to the right view and put V-Ray light, hit escape to cancel the autosave, V-Ray light, make sure it's plane, put a plane here in the side of the door. Now let's go to the top viewport. Let's move this plane back here. So this plane, if we go to perspective you can see it, is a representation, if I go inside, of the light that is coming through this door. So now if I give it a yellowish, I'm not going to make it a skylight portal because we don't have a skylight coming through here. We have a warm light from the living room. So I'm going to disable this. I'm going to change the color of the light to 255 over 180 over 80, which is a bluish tint, like so. And the intensity multiplier, let's make it less than 1 because 1 is very strong, 0.15 for the beginning. And let's go back to camera. Now I want to disable all these lights here. In order to do this, I need only to disable the sun. So from enabled, I'm going to hit this. Now the sun is disabled. And in the material editor, this V-Ray sky. So I can't just disable it. What I can do is make the intensity multiplier, let's remember it's 0.03, make it 0. So now I don't have any lights coming from the outside. Not a sunlight and not a skylight. So the only light in the scene right now is the light coming from the door. So let's try active shading rendering it in real time. Takes a couple of seconds to get started, but once it gets started, every change you make is in real time. Okay, as you can see, there is no light coming from the outside, and there is a yellowish tint coming from the door. It is a weak tint coming from the door, which is very good because we want the main light to be the light from the outside. And now let's in real time go to select by name, select the sun and enable the sun. You can see in real time that the sun is enabled. It's shining on the floor. Now in order to see the environment light that will shine and bounce from the walls, we need to go to materials and take this material, the V-Ray sky material, which is in our rendering environment here, and make it back to 0.03, 0.25 maybe, 0.03 it's too strong. Now we have the skylight, as you can see, the white light coming inside the room, shining inside. We still have a little bit of yellowish tint coming from the door, which is very, very good for us. And as you can see, we use the V-Ray RT, V-Ray real time, to calculate this scene without rendering it 30 times. So it's a very powerful tool. So this is a linear workflow, and the rendering I'm going to show you now, when I go back to regular rendering, not real time, is much more realistic than the rendering we did without linear workflow. So let's close this window for a second. I'm not going to give the background back. I want to use just a white light for the exterior for now, because in the next tutorial I want to give it a whole new background, because the background with the tree is just a little bit obsolete. I don't like it anymore. I want to give it more realistic background. For now we'll have the white light coming through the windows. So in order to render it production render, not the real time, we're going to go to target, production render mode, and we're back to V-Ray advanced. So now we can render the image not in real time. It will take time. It will take from 5 to 10 minutes, maybe more, depending on your system, but the rendering will be much more realistic and less noisy than the real time. Now the last thing I want to do is I want to make sure that the white balance, let me explain what white balance is. When you go to camera, in real life cameras, when you take a photo, if you know what the simplest explanation is, do you know this thing that was a year ago with a blue and gold dress or white and black dress? that some people saw it as blue and gold and some people white and black. This is because the white balance in the camera when she took the photo was way off. So the photo became, the whites became blue, and the colors weren't correct because the camera was not set correctly. In order for our camera to be set correctly, I want this wall, which is white wall, to be white, not to be blue. But because we have a blue light that is coming from the sky and is bouncing on the walls, this wall will be just a little bit bluish. So in order to fix this, I'm going to select the camera, and we have here white balance. So I'm going to hit from illumination daylight, go to temperature. Now I'm going to try to render just this little area here for the speed value. So I'm going to render the image, first the whole image so I can see where I want to render. Okay, this is enough. I'm going to stop the rendering now. And inside this V-Ray frame buffer, I'm going to choose this region render. I'm going to choose this region here, only the wall, without the blinds, without anything, just the wall here, let's say here. And let's render it. It's supposed to render fast because there is nothing in the spot except wall, and wall is fast to render. So that's it. It rendered the wall. Now if I hit right click on the button on the mouse, I can see the values on the left side of the screen. As you can see, 119, 109 and 106. It actually looks very good. It looks not bluish at all. It looks white. The closer the three values that you see here, 120, 111, 110, to each other are, the closer this is to white. So pure white, or let's say gray, would be 120, 120, 120. Because this is red, green, blue. So if the red and the green and the blue will be the same exact value, the color that you get is gray or white. So this is actually good, but I want to make it even closer to white. So let's make the temperature. Let's do something crazy. Let's make the temperature from 6500 to 2000. Let's try rendering now. The white balance will be way off now. So you can see the wall is just pure blue, which is crazy. So if you want to make it less blue, you need to go more than 6500. So let's go to 7000. This is a little bit more yellowish. So in our case, actually, I think the 6500 is perfect, the temperature. So in this case, I actually think that just leave it on illumination daylight on 6500 and it's perfect. In other cases, if you have just render only a piece of wall which is supposed to be gray or white and see if it's not too blue or too red or too yellow. If it's too blue, just take this value, go to temperature, take this value up, and it will be yellow, more yellow. If it's too yellow, take it down and then it will be more blue. So this is how you make a correct white balance. So in our case, I'm not actually going to touch this, and everything is quite perfect. I can render the image now to show you the results, and in the next tutorial I want to show you how I make post-production to this image to make it pop in Photoshop. But even without post-production, I think that the quality of this image will be much better than the last image from tutorial 12 without linear workflow. So thanks for watching. Next tutorial will be on post-production in Photoshop, and now to see what we did here. Thank you for watching. See you next time. So after I completed rendering the image, I saw that some parameters that we applied in this tutorial were wrong. So I just wanted to add this little add-on in the end of the video and tell you what I changed. So first thing I changed is let's go zoom in for a second. Let's go to the camera, perspective viewport, and this light here, this light that shines inside the room from the inside of the house, the yellowish light, I upped its multiplier, its strength to 0.4 because I wanted a little bit. Let's go to C camera. a little bit more of a yellowish tint on the bed here. Also, I changed in the camera. If I go and choose the camera, as we talked about the white balance, and I told you that we didn't need to change anything in this rendering, so I was wrong. After I rendered the image, it was way too bluish. So in order to make it to counteract the bluish tint of the image, I used a value of 7500 temperature Kelvin, and it just the white balance of the image was better. This area here, the white wall, was more white than blue. The third thing I did is I went to the sun node. Let's go to the camera, perspective. I can't actually, one second. Something's wrong with the selection. Never mind. Okay, so I selected the sun. The intensity multiplier for the sun, let's go to the camera viewport, it was way too high. So this area here on the carpet was too burned. So I took the intensity multiplier down to 0.002. And the other thing, in the material editor, the sky portal, the whole environment lighting, I took up to 0.04. So the environmental lighting would be stronger and the sun would be weaker. So you would see the sun on the floor, but it won't burn the image so brightly. So these are the 4 changes I made, and the image looks much better than with the parameters I put in before I finished the video. And now I want to show you the 2 results. So this is the, let's make it bigger. This is the result from video 12. This is the final render of the image, and it's a very good rendering, but I think it looks a little bit cartoonish because there is no bluish light coming from the window, and it looks great. But if I go to the next image that we did just now, this one, as you can see, it still doesn't look as good as this image here, and that's because we didn't do the post-production in Photoshop. But even now you can see that the areas here on the bed, if I go back to the image here and to this image, look more realistic because you can see the light leaks of the blue on the bed, and everything looks just more like a photo and less like a cartoon. So this is the first step. After we finished with the Photoshop post-production in the next tutorial, you would see that this image would be much better than this one, using the linear workflow method. So thanks, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.